Hello, MCU fans. Today we're going to look at the question of whether Disney Plus is just trolling us with their timeline placements. You know, She-Hulk episode 2 just dropped, and theoretically that was going to help clear things up, and instead I would argue it actually made things more confusing. Now, I do understand that a lot of people have just given up on the Disney Plus timeline. I've heard some people say it may as well be interns randomly throwing things on a timeline. I guess I just struggle with that because I do think something so visible as that timeline, which every time something drops on there, there's articles written about it, there's videos made about it. There's no way Marvel, the heads of Marvel, even Feige, is not very much aware that people are looking at that to see where, Marvel feels the timeline is. So I just don't buy that Disney Plus and Marvel are out of sync on this. I think Disney Plus timeline is what Marvel and ultimately Feige wants the timeline to be. But boy, it's a struggle when you get into things like just happened in She-Hulk episode 2. So before we dive into this, let me stress there will be a few spoilers to the episode. So if you have not watched episode 2, I recommend you watch it first and then come back and watch this video. So assuming that you've watched the episode, let's dive right in and figure out whether Disney Plus is just messing with us with the timeline. Now, I do like the She-Hulk series so far. It's been great. Lots of good Easter eggs. So I'm going to cover a couple generic ones first that don't have to do with the timeline, and then we're going to get into the big one. So I love this screenshot of Jen looking at her computer. There's a tab on Find Ant-Man. Ant-Man's become pretty famous after doing his podcast that we learned about in Miss Marvel. So people want to know, where is he? I want to get an autograph. That's awesome. There's a tab on Norse mythology. That's clearly there because of New Asgard. People want to know everything they can learn. There's a tab on Avengers, which I kind of wish she would have clicked on because I really want to know if there's an Avengers team anymore. We don't really hear a discussion of them as a formal team. I kind of think they're not right now, but they will obviously be reforming in the next couple of years because we know Kang Dynasty Avengers movie is coming out. So it would be interesting to learn what's going on with them. There's the QR code that we've seen in Miss Marvel and Moon Knight as well, those series. And this one leads to She-Hulk issue number 1 from 2004. So free comic, pretty good deal. Go check it out. There's an advertisement for an Iron Man themed shoe, kind of like the Air Jordans of the past. Then there's this epic article, Man Fights with Metal Claws in Bar Brawl. Well, that's Wolverine. I don't, unless they're just messing with us at Marvel, that is a reference to Wolverine. And there have been some interesting theories that the X-Men might actually be part of 616 and have been for a while. But Professor X has kept their identity secret, with his incredible telepathy and mind control powers. If Doctor Strange can make everyone forget who Spider-Man is with one spell, then clearly Professor X can make sure that everyone forgets who the X-Men are that might accidentally run into them. In fact, this article is interesting because it could be a case where Wolverine messed up and somebody did spot him. So maybe this means the X-Men are going to be revealed soon. Very interesting. Then there's why is there a giant statue of a man sticking out of the ocean? Interesting, right? I mean, we know why there's a giant statue of a man sticking out of the ocean, but the public really wouldn't know. In fact, I would love to know what the public thinks this thing is. So I appreciate that Marvel is, referring to it, but man, I want more. I want to know what they're saying about this crazy thing. So lots of cool Easter eggs just on that one screenshot. Then at the end of the episode, we see Hulk, Smart Hulk, sitting in what appears to be his lab, but instead it turns out he's actually on a Sakaarian spaceship heading presumably to Sakaar. Several different rumors about what could be going on here and theories. It could be that they're going to adapt World War Hulk, Planet Hulk type storylines. That's possible. But another possibility is that he's going to learn he has a son, which that's similar to the comics, Sakaar, but instead of it being Sakaar, it could end up being Hulkling, because we know the Young Avengers are coming, and while that is absolutely not Hulkling's origin in the comics, we also know the MCU kind of changes things around to fit their overall narrative. So that would be kind of an interesting way to introduce Hulkling for an eventual Young Avengers team. But anyway, we'll see. Those are all just theories. Then we get to an Easter egg about the DODC Supermax prison. Now, the top picture there is from Miss Marvel, because you might remember we saw it, and it was nighttime, but notice the structure of the building there in the center. It's the same building that we now see in She-Hulk. So, man, Department of Damage Control, they're taking over everything, aren't they? But one kind of funny thing, though, is, we see in this episode of She-Hulk that it's very well fortified and protected. I mean, She-Hulk had to walk through laser beams. It could have killed her to get to Abomination. Yet in Miss Marvel, Nadja and the clandestine break out like it's a podunk prison in the middle of nowhere, USA, when the sheriff is asleep, in the front office, and they get the keys off his key belt and sneak out. I don't know what happened to the security between the time of She-Hulk and Miss Marvel, but wow. Now, of course, Abomination was probably an ultra high security, but still, it's just kind of humorous that the clandestine got out so easy. But nonetheless, very cool to see the Supermax prison showing up again. And speaking of the Supermax prison, another Easter egg is we see Blonsky, now in human form, in his prison cell. And note that that is the same prison cell that we saw in Shang Chi, where Abomination, in his clearly not Blonsky form, and Wong are returning from cage fighting, and you can see the prison cell there in the distance. Pretty cool. Speaking of that cage fight, you might remember that cage fight. So Blonsky was not necessarily telling She-Hulk the truth that he's, returned to human form. He can go back to Abomination as well. But yeah, it really raises the question of what was going on with this cage fight and Wong. So it's kind of cool to see that finally referenced in She-Hulk when it appears that the video of that event has gone viral. Someone somehow got footage of it, and now it's been released to the press. So it kind of feels like, oh, wow, the She-Hulk series is happening, right after Shang-Chi, which does make sense from what the showrunner has said. Jessica Gao has said She-Hulk is set not too far after Shang-Chi. It's not like years later. It's a relatively short amount of time. Well, that would make sense, right? The cage fighting in Shang-Chi would have been just, a month or two ago. Could have been even just weeks ago. So that all seems to make sense on She-Hulk's placement being close to Shang-Chi in the timeline. Well, not on Disney Plus. On Disney Plus, notice in the lower right-hand corner, there's She-Hulk. It's very late in the timeline. They place it between Moon Knight and Miss Marvel. And if we look at a month-by-month breakdown of Phase 4, again, according to Disney Plus, I realize fans do not agree with this, but many fans do not. But if we look at Disney Plus, She-Hulk again is in between Moon Knight and Miss Marvel, all three of which are placed after Hawkeye. And Hawkeye is clearly December of 2024, so that puts She-Hulk in 2025. And the reason Moon Knight's in April, you can watch a video on that I did that explains that seemingly the Disney Plus timeline puts it in April because of an Easter egg showing that in the series. So then we've got She-Hulk, and then Miss Marvel appears to happen at the beginning of her junior year in September. So She-Hulk could shift anywhere in between April and September, but I just put it at May for now. But notice that's quite a while after Shang-Chi. I mean, many, many months. And especially considering that we're suddenly seeing this cage fight go public, it seems weird that it would be 8-9 months later. I don't know what to think about that, especially when you look at the fact that Jessica Gao implied that She-Hulk happens relatively soon after Shang-Chi. Well, this is not relatively soon after Shang-Chi. So again, assuming that Disney Plus timeline is an accurate reflection of what Marvel is intending, not necessarily what the showrunner intended, but at least what Marvel is intending, then is there a way to make this work? Well, there is. I mean, if you consider the fact that in Shang-Chi, they were cage fighting, and that was an ultra super secret, fight club. And if you remember, if you saw the Fight Club movie, the number one rule of Fight Club is no one talks about Fight Club. So my guess is that you're not allowed to go in with cameras and start recording things. And certainly if you are, you're in trouble. So then that does raise the question, how is there footage? Well, it's possible that footage was actually by the people running the Fight Club. and that maybe after Blonsky suddenly shows up in She-Hulk and She-Hulk's trying to get him paroled, which put him on the news, then they released it to try to keep him in prison, maybe so they can keep him in the Fight Club. I mean, there's a way to explain it, and that would justify why it didn't come out for quite a while. You know, it probably never would have been released, honestly, if not for the fact that with Blonsky getting off on parole, maybe they don't want him to be able to, go out and be free. They want him to still go in and do the cage fights and make them money. So I'm trying my best, Disney. I'm trying to understand where they're going with this. There is an explanation, but I tell you what, Wong's going to show up, and we'll see how his chronology works. His outfit chronology, as you can see laid out here, does seem to place She-Hulk after Multiverse of Madness. Because notice in Shang Chi, when he appears, he's kind of in his, I call it monkly garb. It's very simple and not splashy, right? Then in No Way Home, he's got the same outfit on. But then in Multiverse of Madness, he has more what I would call his superhero outfit. I mean, certainly very flashy. And then when he appears in She-Hulk, he does seem to have that same outfit. Now, that is not conclusive proof that She-Hulk happens after Multiverse of Madness and thus in 2025. But certainly when Wong shows up, he will probably make some reference to that cage fight. So that's going to be the final piece to the puzzle. If Wong shows up and says, oh yeah, we did that like a week ago, well, then there you go. The timeline makes no sense on Disney+. But if he comes in and goes, how did that thing get released? What's going on? And first of all, that was a while ago, and no one was supposed to know about that. So if that's how it happens, then maybe we're okay, and maybe it makes sense, and maybe She-Hulk really is in May-June timeframe of 2025. So there you have it. I'm trying my best, Disney. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt, but man, you better bring it with episode 3. You better bring it. So now we wait for episode 3 for more answers or maybe more questions, right? Oh, well, hey, if you don't mind, if you like this video, if you would, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And then I have lots more video content you can check out. And in the meantime, continue to enjoy the ever-growing, ever-expanding Marvel Cinematic Universe.